My wife declared intimacy wasn't a marital duty, and our marriage collapsed into silence until I finally ended it to reclaim freedom and myself. It was a silent meal, punctuated by the clinking of cutlery on plates. Lately, silence had become the third companion at our table, sitting with us like an unwelcome guest. After we cleared the dishes, I suggested we sit in the living room and talk. It wasn't out of nowhere. I'd been feeling the growing distance between us for months, a chasm I couldn't quite define but couldn't ignore either. That night, I wanted answers, even if I wasn't sure what questions to ask. So I started simply, cautiously. Is everything okay with us? I mean, really okay? Her expression barely shifted, but something flickered in her eyes, something tired, perhaps even resentful. She leaned back on the couch, crossed her arms and sighed, as if summoning the energy to give me a response. Then she dropped the bombshell. Intimacy isn't a marital duty. I don't owe you that. And I don't think it's something you should expect from me. At first, I thought I had misheard her. My ears buzzed as her words hung in the air, sharp and definitive. I blinked a few times, trying to process what she had just said. What do you mean by that? I finally managed, my voice wavering. I mean exactly what I said, she replied, her tone calm but cold. Intimacy, physical or emotional, isn't something I feel obligated to give just because we're married. It doesn't work like that. Her nonchalance felt like a slap in the face. I sat there, stunned, as if someone had pulled the rug out from under me. This wasn't a simple declaration about sex or affection. It was a rejection of everything I thought marriage was built on: connection, partnership, vulnerability. I tried to stay composed, but the words spilled out of me. Is this how you've always felt, or is this just now? Because if this is where you stand, then what's the point of us being together? She shrugged. I don't know what to tell you. I've changed. Maybe you haven't. Maybe that's the problem. Her casual dismissal ignited something in me. Anger, hurt, confusion, all of it churned together into a storm I couldn't suppress. You've changed? What does that even mean? I demanded. We're supposed to grow together, not drift apart. And you think it's okay to just decide on your own that intimacy doesn't matter anymore? Her expression hardened. It's not like you've been a saint in this relationship either. You want to point fingers? Go ahead. But don't act like you've been the perfect husband. This isn't just about me. That hit harder than I expected. Of course, I wasn't perfect. I'd made mistakes. Small ones, I thought, like forgetting anniversaries or getting lost in work. But nothing I'd done felt like it could justify this. I wanted to argue, to fight back, but my thoughts were a jumbled mess. I realized I didn't even know how long she'd felt this way. How many nights had she gone to bed pretending everything was fine while secretly checking out of our marriage? How many times had I missed the signs? I sat there silent, grappling with the weight of her words. She didn't seem interested in filling the silence. Instead, she got up, muttered something about being tired, and walked upstairs, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I stayed on that couch for hours, replaying the conversation in my mind, dissecting every word, every shrug, every indifferent look. I couldn't escape the feeling that something fundamental between us had broken, perhaps irreparably. This wasn't just about intimacy. It was about what we owed each other as partners, about what it meant to share a life. And if she truly believed she owed me nothing, no connection, no effort, no vulnerability, then what were we even doing? That night, sleep didn't come easily. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if this was the moment our marriage had truly ended. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table, nursing a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. The night had offered no clarity, only more questions. I knew I couldn't let things sit as they were. If her words from the night before were true, if she genuinely believed intimacy and connection were optional, I needed to know how deep that belief ran. Was this her truth, or was it just a wall she'd built to protect something else? She came downstairs around mid-morning, looking calm, even indifferent, as if the bomb she had dropped the night before had no lingering effects on her. That, more than anything, enraged me. How could she be so unaffected? We need to talk, I said, my voice steady but firm. She sighed, her shoulders dropping as she grabbed a glass of water and leaned against the counter. I figured you'd say that. Fine. Talk. I didn't want to explode. I wanted answers. I took a deep breath. What you said last night, was that really how you feel? That intimacy isn't part of marriage? That you don't owe me, or this relationship, that effort? She set the glass down and folded her arms, her gaze unwavering. I meant what I said. I don't think it's something that should be expected like a duty, and honestly, I feel like it's all you've been focused on lately. It's exhausting. Exhausting? I repeated, incredulous. You're telling me that trying to connect with my own wife is exhausting? Do you even hear yourself right now? Her expression shifted slightly, her lips tightening. You don't get it. You think this is just about sex, but it's not. It's about how I feel in this marriage. You want intimacy, but what have you done to create it? You think showing up and saying a few nice things every now and then is enough? It's not. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. For a moment, I didn't know how to respond. So what? You're saying this is my fault? That I'm the reason you've decided to shut me out? I'm saying it's not as simple as you think, she shot back. You don't listen. You don't notice when I'm struggling. And now you want to turn this into some moral debate about marital obligations? Like you're entitled to something from me? The anger I'd been trying to suppress finally broke through. You want to talk about entitlement? What about the fact that I've been here, trying, while you've been checked out for who knows how long? How is that fair? She didn't flinch. Fair? Life isn't fair, and neither is marriage. Maybe I should have spoken up sooner, but honestly, I didn't think it would make a difference. Those words stung more than anything else. She didn't think it would make a difference. What did that say about how she saw me, how she saw us? Why didn't you tell me? I demanded, my voice rising. Why didn't you say something before it got to this point? Did you ever think about what this would do to me, to us? She looked away, her jaw tightening. Maybe I didn't know how, or maybe I was scared. But the truth is, I don't think we've been happy for a long time. I've just been the one brave enough to admit it. Her words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I wanted to argue, to fight back, to list all the ways I had tried to make things work. But a small, painful part of me wondered if she was right. Had I been blind to her unhappiness? Had I ignored the signs because it was easier than facing the truth? I don't know where we go from here, I said finally, my voice quieter now. But I can't keep pretending this is normal, that this is okay. She nodded, almost as if she'd been expecting that. I don't want to pretend anymore either. And with that, the conversation ended, leaving behind a silence that was louder than any argument we'd ever had. After that confrontation, the house felt like a void, silent and heavy with unresolved tension. We went about our routines in a state of detachment, barely speaking unless absolutely necessary. She seemed content to carry on like this, but for me, every quiet moment felt like a screaming reminder that things were crumbling around us. I couldn't let go of her words, her coldness, the way she seemed so certain that nothing could or should change. One night, after she'd gone to bed, I found myself sitting on the edge of the couch, staring into the dim light of the living room. The ticking of the wall clock was the only sound. My thoughts were relentless, cycling through every argument, every moment that had brought us here. I kept asking myself, how did it get this bad? How did we lose each other? I started replaying our early days, trying to pinpoint where things had shifted. I remembered the way we used to laugh together, the way we couldn't keep our hands off each other in the beginning. We used to dream out loud, planning trips, talking about the kind of future we wanted to build. Those memories felt like they belonged to another lifetime, another version of us that no longer existed. And then I started noticing the cracks that had always been there. Cracks I'd ignored because I didn't want to face the possibility that we might not be as strong as I thought. The arguments we brushed under the rug, the nights when she seemed distant but I told myself she was just tired, the little ways we stopped making an effort, one by one they all added up. Had I failed her? Had I been so wrapped up in my own world that I didn't see her slipping away? Or had she simply given up on me without ever giving me a chance to fix things? The questions gnawed at me, and the more I thought about it, the more I realized I'd been complicit in our downfall. But then another thought crept in, a quieter, more painful one. Maybe it wasn't just about what I'd done wrong. Maybe this wasn't something I could fix. Marriage, I'd always believed, was about fighting for each other. But it seemed like I was the only one still willing to fight. I tried to imagine what life would look like if things stayed the same. Would I be okay with a loveless, disconnected marriage? Could I live like that, knowing she didn't see me as a partner anymore, just as someone sharing the same roof? The answer was clear, and it terrified me. No, I couldn't live like that. I stayed up that night, staring into the darkness, trying to figure out what to do next. Leaving felt like betrayal, like admitting defeat, but staying felt like slow, certain death. For the first time, I began to accept that this might not end with reconciliation. This might end with goodbye. The thought brought a strange mix of emotions, grief for what we'd lost, anger at how easily she seemed to dismiss it all, and fear of what came next. But there was also a spark of something else, something that felt almost like relief. Maybe I was finally ready to stop holding on to something that wasn't holding on to me. Maybe it was time to confront the truth, no matter how painful it was. The weight of that realization settled over me as I sat in the silence of our home, a home that no longer felt like ours. For the first time in a long time, I let myself imagine what life could be like if I chose myself, if I chose to walk away from the version of us that was already gone. And as terrifying as it was, that thought felt like a small, necessary step towards something I hadn't felt in years: freedom. The morning after that long, restless night, something shifted inside me. I woke up with a strange sense of clarity, as though the fog of uncertainty had finally begun to lift. I couldn't keep living in limbo, stuck in a relationship where one of us had already let go. The truth was stark and unavoidable. I needed to take control of my life, even if it meant walking away from the one I'd built with her. I spent the next few days in a kind of preparation, not just logistical, but emotional. It wasn't easy. For years, I'd tied my identity to this marriage, to being her husband, to the future we'd once envisioned together. Letting go felt like tearing a piece of myself away, but I knew it was necessary. The hardest part was accepting that this wasn't just about her words or even her actions. It was about the space we'd created between us, a chasm that no amount of effort on my part could bridge if she wasn't willing to meet me halfway. I couldn't fix what she didn't want to fix, and I couldn't keep sacrificing my own happiness, my own sense of self, just to maintain the illusion of a marriage. I started small. I spoke to a close friend, someone I trusted to give me honest advice without judgment. It was the first time I said the words out loud: "I think I'm going to leave her." Hearing them made it real, tangible. My friend didn't try to talk me out of it. Instead, they listened, nodding their quiet support, a stark contrast to the chaos in my mind. From there, I began to prepare for the inevitable conversation. I rehearsed it in my head, imagining every possible reaction she might have: anger, tears, indifference. I thought about what I would say, how I would frame my decision, not as an attack on her, but as a necessary step for both of us to find what we truly needed. As the days passed, I also took practical steps. I began looking into apartments, knowing that I'd need a place to go if, or when, I left. I started organizing my personal belongings, sorting through years of shared memories with a bittersweet ache. Every photo, every memento felt like a small goodbye. Despite the weight of it all, I felt something else growing inside me: resolve. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt like I was taking charge of my life instead of being swept along by circumstances. Finally, the moment came. It was a Sunday evening, and she was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone, her expression unreadable. I sat down across from her, my heart pounding but my voice steady. "We need to talk," I said, echoing the words I'd used before. Only this time there was no hesitation, no uncertainty. She put her phone down and looked at me, her face calm, almost expectant. "Okay," she said. I took a deep breath and began. "I've been doing a lot of thinking about us, about where we are and where we're going, and I've realized something. I can't keep living like this. I can't keep pretending that this is enough for either of us." Her brow furrowed slightly, but she didn't interrupt. I pressed on. "I love you, I always have. But love isn't enough if there's no connection, no effort, no partnership. And I think we both know that's been missing for a long time. I've tried to hold on, to fight for this, but I can't do it alone. And I don't think you want to fight for it either." Her eyes flickered with something. Anger? Sadness? I couldn't tell. "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying I think it's time for us to end this," I said, my voice firm despite the lump in my throat. "We're not happy, and I don't think we can make each other happy anymore. Staying together is only making it worse." For a moment, she just stared at me, her expression unreadable. Then, slowly, she nodded. "I guess I've been waiting for you to say it," she said softly, because I didn't know how. Her words hit me like a punch to the chest, but there was also a strange sense of relief in them. We both knew this was the end, and for the first time in a long time, we were on the same page. The conversation didn't last long after that. There were no dramatic outbursts, no attempts to change each other's minds, just a quiet, mutual understanding that our journey together had reached its conclusion. When it was over, I felt a strange mix of emotions, grief, relief, and an overwhelming sense of finality. But above all, I felt certain that I'd made the right choice, even if it was the hardest one I'd ever had to make. The days following our conversation were surreal, a mix of the mundane and the monumental. For the first time in years, I felt untethered, as though I was standing at the edge of a cliff, staring into the unknown. We agreed to take things slowly, to figure out the logistics without rushing into chaos. But even with that mutual understanding, the house felt heavier, every shared space charged with the knowledge that it would soon cease to be ours. The first big step came when I found an apartment. It was small, a stark contrast to the home we had built together, but it felt right. It was mine. Signing the lease was a strange experience, a mix of empowerment and heartbreak. I wasn't just signing for a new place to live, I was signing off on the life we'd shared, Packing was the hardest part. Every object I picked up seemed to carry a memory. The coffee mugs we'd bought on a whim during a weekend trip, the framed photo from our wedding, the blanket we used to cuddle under during movie nights back when we still touched each other without hesitation. I had to make deliberate choices about what to take and what to leave behind. With every box I packed, I felt like I was dismantling the life we'd built together, piece by piece. One evening, as I was sorting through a pile of books, she walked into the room. She had been giving me space, not out of kindness, but because neither of us knew what to say anymore. But that night, she sat down across from me, her face soft, almost vulnerable. "Are you sure this is what you want?" she asked quietly. I looked at her, surprised by the question. For a moment, I hesitated, not because I doubted my decision, but because I could see the pain in her eyes, a flicker of regret that hadn't been there before. "I don't think it's about what I want anymore," I said finally. "It's about what we need, and I think we both know this is the only way." She nodded, her gaze dropping to the floor. "I wish it didn't have to be like this." "Me too," I said, and I meant it. But wishing didn't change the reality. The next few days passed in a blur of logistics, dividing furniture, discussing finances, untangling the threads of our shared lives. It wasn't as contentious as I'd feared, but it wasn't easy either. There were moments of tension, moments when old wounds resurfaced, but we managed to navigate them without letting things spiral into bitterness. The night before I moved out, I sat alone in the empty living room, surrounded by the echoes of a life that no longer felt like mine. She was upstairs, and for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel the weight of her absence. Instead, I felt a strange sense of closure. When morning came, we didn't drag out the goodbye. She stood by the door as I loaded the last box into my car. "Take care of yourself," she said, her voice quiet but steady. "You too," I replied. And that was it. No dramatic farewell, no tears, just two people acknowledging the end of something that had once meant everything. Driving away felt like crossing a threshold. I kept glancing at the rearview mirror, watching the house grow smaller and smaller until it disappeared entirely. For a brief moment, I felt the weight of grief pressing down on me. But it was quickly replaced by something else, something lighter. I wasn't running away from the life we'd built. I was walking towards something new, something I could build on my own. The first night in my new apartment was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. The walls were bare, the rooms quiet in a way that felt almost eerie, and my belongings were scattered in disorganized piles. It didn't feel like home. It felt like a waiting room for whatever came next. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the unfamiliar space, and for the first time since the decision to leave, the weight of loneliness pressed heavily on my chest. There were no footsteps above me, no familiar hum of another person moving through the house. It was just me. I thought I would feel liberated, and in a way, I did. But that freedom came with an ache, a hollow reminder of everything I'd left behind. The days that followed were a roller coaster of emotions. Some mornings, I woke up feeling hopeful, even excited about the possibilities ahead. Other days, I could barely get out of bed, the finality of my choice sinking in like a lead weight. I'd scroll through my phone, instinctively wanting to text her, to share something funny or ask her opinion about something trivial. But I stopped myself every time. That chapter was closed. Work became a strange kind of solace. It gave me structure, a reason to get out of the apartment and interact with the world. But even there, I felt the absence of my old life. Colleagues who knew about the separation would tiptoe around the subject, their awkward attempts at support only making me feel more exposed. One evening, about a month after I'd moved out, I went for a walk in the park near my apartment. It was a warm evening, the kind where the air feels alive with possibility. Families were laughing, couples strolled hand in hand, and joggers passed by with focused determination. I sat on a bench, watching the world move around me, and something clicked. For so long, I'd been stuck in a narrative where my life revolved around our marriage. What it had been, what it had become, and what I'd lost when it ended. But in that moment, I realized I wasn't defined by that relationship. I was still here, still breathing, still capable of building something new. That realization didn't erase the pain, but it softened it. It made room for something else, hope. Slowly, I started to focus on myself in ways I hadn't in years. I signed up for a cooking class, something I'd always wanted to do but never had time for. I reconnected with old friends, people I'd drifted away from during the marriage. I even started journaling, pouring my thoughts onto paper in an attempt to make sense of everything. And then one day, I woke up and realized I felt lighter. It wasn't a sudden dramatic change, just a quiet, steady shift. The apartment started to feel like home. The silence that once haunted me became a source of peace. One evening, while unpacking a box I'd ignored for weeks, I found an old photo of us. It was from the early days, when everything felt effortless and full of promise. I stared at it for a long time, remembering who we were back then and who we became. I didn't feel anger or regret, just gratitude for the good moments we'd shared. That's when I knew I was ready to truly let go, not just of her, but of the version of myself that had been tied to that marriage. I wasn't the same person anymore, and that was okay. The future still felt uncertain, but for the first time in a long time it also felt open. I didn't know exactly where I was headed, but I knew one thing for sure: I was moving forward, step by step, into a life that was entirely my own. As I sit in my new apartment, the hum of the city outside my window feels like a distant pulse, both grounding and disorienting. The past few months have been a storm of change, and though I've crossed the threshold into a new life, the emotions linger, swirling like leaves caught in an autumn wind. This isn't just about leaving a marriage or reclaiming my independence. It's about navigating the raw, messy layers of what it means to lose something you thought defined you and to find yourself in the wreckage. Let me try to unravel the tangle of feelings that have carried me here, not just to make sense of it for you, but to anchor myself in this new reality. The first emotion that hits me, even now, is grief. It's not loud or dramatic, but a quiet ache that surfaces in unexpected moments, like when I unpack a box and find a forgotten trinket from our early years together. I grieve the version of us that laughed over late-night pizza, that planned a future with unshakable certainty. I grieve the man I was, so sure that love and effort could conquer anything. The loss of that naivety stings as much as the loss of her. There are nights when I lie awake, wondering if I could have done something differently, listened better, noticed sooner, fought harder. That grief is heavy, like a stone in my chest, but it's also a reminder of what I valued. It tells me I cared deeply, and there's a strange comfort in that. Anger comes in waves, less consuming now but still sharp. It's not the fiery rage I felt when she dismissed our marriage with a shrug, but a quieter burn, rooted in betrayal. Her words, "Intimacy isn't a marital duty," cut deeper than I can explain. They weren't just a rejection of me, they were a dismissal of everything I thought we were building. The anger flares when I think of how easily she checked out, how she let our connection erode without a word. It's not just her I'm angry at, though. I'm angry at myself for missing the signs, for believing in a partnership that was already half gone. But this anger isn't destructive anymore. It's become a catalyst, pushing me to set boundaries, to demand respect, not just from others, but from myself. Then there's the loneliness, a companion I didn't expect to feel so keenly. In the quiet of my apartment, with no one to share the small victories or mundane frustrations, I feel the weight of solitude. It's not just the absence of her, but the absence of the rhythm we had. Flawed as it was, I miss the sound of another person's presence, the way even a silent room felt alive with someone else's breath. Loneliness creeps in when I eat dinner alone or when I see couples in the park, their hands intertwined in a way that feels like a distant memory. But I've learned to sit with it, to let it teach me resilience. I've started filling the silence with new sounds, music I never used to listen to, conversations with friends I hadn't realized I'd drifted from, the scratch of my pen as I journal my thoughts. Relief, though, is the undercurrent that surprises me most. There's a lightness in no longer carrying the weight of a failing marriage. For years, I walked on eggshells, sensing her distance but afraid to name it. Now, that fear is gone. I'm free from the pretense, from the exhausting dance of trying to fix something she didn't want to repair. This relief shows up in small ways. The first morning I woke up without dread, the moment I realized I could make decisions without second-guessing her approval. It's not joy, not yet, but a quiet freedom that feels like breathing after being underwater for too long. There's also a flicker of hope, fragile but growing. Hope that this isn't the end of my story, but a pivot to something better. I've started to see possibilities where I once saw only endings. Maybe I'll find love again, not the naive kind of my youth, but something deeper, built on mutual respect. Maybe I'll rebuild a life that feels authentic, not defined by someone else's expectations. This hope is what gets me out of bed on the hard days, what pushes me to sign up for that cooking class, to say yes to a coffee with a new friend. It's a belief that pain isn't the final word. Guilt lingers too, though it's softer now. I question whether I was too quick to walk away, whether I should have tried harder to bridge the gap. Was I selfish for choosing myself? But then I remember her words, her indifference, and I know I couldn't have stayed without losing more of who I am. The guilt is less about her now and more about the life we planned, the one that included dreams we never got to chase. I feel guilty for letting those dreams die, even if I know they were already fading. Empowerment has been the unexpected gift of this ordeal. Making the decision to leave, to start over, was terrifying, but it showed me my own strength. I've learned to trust my instincts, to navigate the world on my terms. Every step, signing the lease, unpacking my new space, even writing these words, feels like a declaration of agency. I'm not just surviving, I'm building something new. That empowerment carries me through the moments of doubt, reminding me that I'm capable of more than I ever gave myself credit for. And finally, there's acceptance, a calm that settles over me like dusk. I've accepted that our marriage wasn't what I thought it was, that we both played a role in its unraveling. I've accepted that love isn't enough without effort, that sometimes walking away is the bravest choice. This acceptance doesn't erase the pain, but it gives me permission to move forward. It lets me see the past not as a failure, but as a chapter that taught me who I am. These emotions, grief, anger, loneliness, relief, hope, guilt, empowerment, acceptance, aren't linear. They overlap, collide, and sometimes coexist in the same breath. But they've shaped me into someone new, someone who knows the cost of love and the value of self-respect. I'm not healed, not completely, but I'm whole. And as I sit here, looking out at a city that doesn't yet know my story, I feel ready to write the next chapter, one where I'm the author, not the footnote.